From the second we wake up, we're navigating systems. Some are tiny and personal, some are massive and societal, and, well, some are just unbelievably ambitious. Today, we're diving into that core human need to create order out of chaos. We're going to connect a few things that seem totally random at first and use them to tell a story about how we build the rules for, well, everything, from our own bank accounts to entire galaxies. All right, let's get into it.
Okay, let's start our investigation right here. What you're looking at is a legal document, filed in a U.S. District Court back in 2016. This is a public system in action. It's a formal, structured way to handle conflict, to enforce rules, and hopefully to find a resolution when things go seriously wrong. It's pretty much one of the most basic systems any society has to invent.
Now let's totally flip the script. We go from that very public system to something incredibly private. This is just a little piece of a personal budget dated for winter 2025. This isn't about grand social justice. This is about one person's survival. And look at the language: savings floor, checking floor. These are rules someone made for themselves, a personal system built just to manage financial chaos and, keep their head above water.
So, how in the world do we connect the dots between a budget spreadsheet, a lawsuit, and the massive architecture of future civilizations? Well, that's exactly the journey we're on today. We're going to look at the systems we live by every day, find a kind of universal law for how all systems change, see how that plays out on a truly cosmic scale, and explore what it all says about our deep, fundamental need to build order.
Okay, first things first, let's ground ourselves right here in the now. We are constantly moving through a world of systems, every single day, whether we really think about it or not. They're like the scaffolding of our reality, from the laws we follow to the way we manage our money.
Let's zoom in on this one line from that personal budget, rent cap 500. This is a perfect, tiny example of a microsystem. It's a hard limit, a rule created by one person with a single goal: stability. It's a tiny piece of personal architecture designed for one reason: to keep things from falling apart financially.
And then you scale that idea way up. You get the macro systems. Back to that lawsuit, the claims here are incredibly serious. This is what happens when the most basic rules of trust and safety are shattered. So society's system, the entire legal framework, is designed to step in. It's really the collective version of that personal rent cap, but instead of protecting a bank account, it's there to enforce civil rights and maintain order for millions.
So, okay, all these systems, big and small, are built for stability. But what happens when they have to change? Well, to find a kind of universal blueprint for transformation, we're going to take an unexpected detour. We're heading into organic chemistry. Now, I know it sounds like a massive leap, but stick with me, because the principles here, they apply to absolutely everything.
So, say hello to activation energy. In a chemistry lab, it's just the jolt of energy you need to kickstart a reaction. But think bigger. Think of it as the resistance to change in any system. It's the sheer effort it takes to start a new habit, the political will you need to pass a new law, or the force required to bring down an old empire. It is the hill that you have to climb.
And what's waiting for you at the very top of that hill? The transition state. And man, it is pure chaos up there. It's incredibly unstable, it's high energy, and it's over in a flash. Old ways of doing things are breaking down, but the new ones haven't clicked into place yet. It's that messy, uncomfortable, but absolutely essential peak you have to get over to go from what was to what's next. And that's true for molecules and, as we're about to see, for entire civilizations.
All right, let's take this idea and run with it. We're going to apply our chemistry metaphor to the biggest scale you can imagine. Picture an activation energy event so huge it literally reshapes what it means to be human. Picture a war that doesn't just cross borders, but burns across timelines.
According to these future historical records, the hyperwar was the ultimate catalyst. It started with a 21-year-long burn, then a war of fractures, where people literally thought shadow versions of themselves in folded time. It got so bad there was a war where the atmosphere itself was the weapon. This wasn't just a conflict, it was a planetary-scale transition state, forcing humanity over an unbelievable energy barrier.
So what happens after you survive that kind of chaos? That's the crucial part. This is from the founding decree of the government that rose from the ashes. And get this, they didn't just want to rebuild. They saw all that destructive energy from the transition state as fuel. The idea was that the collapse itself would illuminate creation. It's a wild philosophy. Use the energy of the crisis to innovate at a speed that should be impossible. And out of that illumination,
Two brand new competing systems of order rose up to govern the rebuilt world. Two grand philosophies, really, for how you structure humanity after the end of everything.
And here they are, side by side. The West chose a system of function. Think dynamic growth, cooperative technology, constant motion. Their whole motto was simply the West grows. The East, on the other hand, chose form. Their focus was on structure, precision, a kind of corporate meritocracy. Their motto, the East builds. You can almost think of it as a society built like a river versus one built like a skyscraper. One is all about flow, the other is all about the foundation.
But here's the thing, it wasn't just a simple rivalry. This quote from a future archivist hints at something much deeper. The two systems aren't just fighting each other, they're in resonance. They create a kind of global balance, almost like an inhale and an exhale. One system's constant growth is measured and balanced by the other's precision. Together, they create a stable planetary hum.
So, okay, that's the big picture philosophy. But what did these new societies actually look like on the ground? Let's zoom in and look at the blueprints, the nitty-gritty details of how they actually organize themselves.
Check this out. This is the government of the Agamemnian Concordat, a system built around these columns. You see the familiar stuff, right? Executive, legislative, judicial. But then look closer. There's a temporal and foundational column, a government branch for managing time and history, and an Azure column for diplomacy and design? This isn't just a government. It's a machine engineered for resilience against threats we can't even begin to imagine.
And here's a totally different model. Later on, in the Garden Republic, they don't even have political parties. They have pedal movements, as if the whole of society were a single plant. You've got the Verdanists, who are basically warrior scientists, the Florins, who are diplomats and artists. You even have the Massilians, whose motto is, from rot, renewal. The point isn't for one party to win, it's for each petal to contribute its unique function to keep the whole garden healthy.
And that really brings us full circle, doesn't it? We start with these tiny, personal systems built just to survive. But over time, humanity's drive to organize evolves. The goal isn't just to avoid collapse anymore, it's to actively cultivate and nourish a better world.
Let's go all the way back to that 2025 budget. That number? That's a credit card balance. That's a real, tangible feeling of a system under pressure. It's the stress of debt, the daily fight for personal solvency. This is the starting point, a system built just to survive.
Now contrast that feeling of pure stress with this, an amendment to the Constitution of that Garden Republic. Let no law bloom that does not smell of kindness. The entire goal of the system has profoundly shifted. It's not about order or survival anymore. The new test for whether a law is good, for whether the system is working, is compassion.
And this, well, this is the ultimate endpoint of our whole journey. A system so complete, so deeply ingrained, that it's literally written into our biology. The law is no longer something outside of us, it's part of our DNA. Ethics are tied directly to evolution. The human impulse to create order has become so total that the system and the self have finally merged. So, from the smallest personal rulebook to a constitution written in our very cells, it's pretty clear we are all architects of systems. And that brings us to one last question for you. Whether your world is just your own life, your family, or something way bigger, what's the one rule, the one core principle that you would build it all around?